GTA 6 is finally getting closer, and while most of us are talking about how massive the game looks, there's another question I think a lot of people are quietly asking. How is this thing actually going to run? Because Rockstar is trying to put one of the most ambitious open world games ever made on hardware that's now several years old. And if you own a PS5, a PS5 Pro, an Xbox Series X, or even a Series S, you might be wondering whether your console is actually going to give you the GTA 6 experience you've been picturing in your head. Are we getting 60 frames per second? Is 30 going to be the target? What about resolution? And does owning a PS5 Pro actually make a meaningful difference here? So today we're going to break down what we actually know, what the technical evidence suggests, and most importantly, what you should realistically expect when GTA 6 launches on November 19th. Let's get into it. Before we get into this though, there's one thing I want to make very clear. Rockstar hasn't given us every technical detail about GTA 6, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you something is confirmed when it isn't. We're going to separate what Rockstar has officially told us, what technical analysts have actually discovered, and what we can reasonably predict based on hardware, because there's a big difference between saying something is confirmed and saying something is likely. And by the end, I'm going to break this down console by console so you know exactly what to expect from the one sitting under your TV right now. One more thing before we start, and this genuinely could not be better timing. In exactly 1 week on August 27th, Rockstar is releasing what they call an extended look at GTA 6. It's premiering on Netflix first, then hitting YouTube 6 hours later. This is the first time we're expected to see real extended gameplay rather than cinematic trailer footage. So everything in this video is my best analysis using what we have right now, and there's a real chance some of it gets confirmed or blown up completely within 7 days. Let's start with the baseline. Here's what's actually confirmed straight from Rockstar and Take-Two. GTA 6 launches November 19, 2026 on PS5, PS5 Pro, Xbox Series X, and Xbox Series S. There's no PS4 or Xbox One version, and as of right now, there's no confirmed PC release at all, not even a window. Sony has a marketing partnership with Rockstar, and the game officially carries a PS5 Pro enhanced badge on the PlayStation Store, with Sony's own marketing saying the game plays best on PS5. And here's something that actually matters more than people realize. Rockstar has confirmed that the second trailer was captured entirely on a base PS5, not a Pro, not an Xbox, a standard PS5. That's the closest thing we have to real evidence of how the baseline hardware handles this game. So we know GTA 6 is coming to the entire current console generation. The question isn't whether these consoles can run it. They have to. The question is what Rockstar has had to sacrifice to make that happen. Let's deal with the question everybody actually wants answered. Is GTA 6 going to run at 60 frames per second? Here's the uncomfortable truth. No mainline GTA game has ever launched at 60 frames per second on console. GTA 4, GTA 5, and Red Dead Redemption 2, every single one of them launched at 30 FPS. GTA 5 didn't get a 60 FPS option until nearly 9 years later, and that was a running game engineered for PlayStation 3. And this is where things get genuinely interesting, because the biggest obstacle to 60 frames per second might not actually be the graphics, it could be the CPU. Digital Foundry's own analysis put it directly. Dense city locations are exactly where frame rates drop, and GTA 6's world looks another level of magnitude more demanding than recent CPU-heavy games like Baldur's Gate 3. And fast travel by ground, sea, and air, each with its own expensive physics. And 60 frames per second starts to look like a genuine stretch and not a given. When you look at GTA 6, you're not just looking at pretty graphics. You're looking at an entire city that's constantly doing things. Dense traffic, pedestrians reacting to the world around them, police systems, whether that actually interacts with gameplay physics, vehicles with their own simulated behavior, and all of that has to be calculated while the game is simultaneously rendering one of the most detailed worlds anyone's built for consoles. That's why simply saying the PS5 Pro is more powerful, so it should run GTA 6 at 60 frames per second doesn't actually hold up. Power in this conversation isn't one thing. It's split between the GPU, which draws the pixels, and the CPU, which runs the simulation underneath everything you see. and GTA 6's biggest demand appears to sit squarely on the CPU side of that equation. Now let's go console by console, starting with the standard PS5 since it's the one most people actually own. The base PS5 has a solid GPU, 16 gigs of RAM, and a fast SSD, hardware that's held up remarkably well 4 years in. And based on what Digital Foundry pulled from the actual trailer footage, which again was confirmed shot on a base PS5, the internal render resolution looked to be somewhere around 2560 by 1152, upscaled to 4K for output. For the standard PS5, I think the safest expectation right now is that Rockstar prioritizes stability and visual quality over chasing an extremely high frame rate. You'll very likely be looking at a 30 frames per second target with strong image quality, which based on Rockstar's history with frame pacing could actually feel a lot smoother than the raw number suggests. Now, if you've been around the channel for a while, thank you for subscribing and thank you for supporting the channel. You might remember I made a video asking whether it was finally time to get a PS5 Pro. And one of the biggest points I made in that video was that the PS5 Pro's real advantage isn't going to be turning every game into a locked 60 frames per second. GTA 6 might be the single clearest example of exactly why. Here's what the PS5 Pro actually brings. A GPU with roughly 45% more compute power than the base PS5, and PSSR, Sony's AI upscaling technology, which can produce a sharper, cleaner image. Those are real, meaningful upgrades on the visual side. But the CPU is essentially the same chip, just clocked about 10% higher. And Digital Foundry has been direct about what that means. The console only offers a fractional CPU performance bump over base PS5. None of these features really shift the needle in terms of alleviating the CPU burden. Your actual conclusion is that a 30 or 40 frames per second mode on PS5 Pro is far more realistic than 60 FPS. So if you're expecting the PS5 Pro to magically turn GTA 6 into a smooth 60 frames per second experience, I would seriously manage those expectations. But that doesn't mean the Pro is pointless here. It likely means you get the best looking version of that game, 30 frames per second experience, sharper resolution, more stable ray tracing, better image quality throughout. So with a PS5 Pro, you'll be paying for how the game would look, not necessarily how fast it moves. Now, let me move to Xbox, starting with the Series X. The Series X is still a very capable piece of hardware. On paper, its GPU actually edges out the base PS5 slightly, and it shares a similar CPU class. There's meaningfully less GTA 6 specific analysis of Series X out there right now, mostly because Sony holds the marketing partnership and all the confirmed trailer footage was shot on PlayStation. But based on Rockstar's own track record, GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2 both ran essentially equivalent versions on PS5 and Series X. The most reasonable expectation is that Series X delivers a very similar experience to base PS5. Similar target frame rate, similar resolution class, without the extra visual ceiling the PS5 Pro brings. And I want to be honest here, this is one of the places where the evidence is thinner than I'd like. If you're a Series X owner, that's not because your console is somehow the problem. It's because almost all the public technical analysis so far has been PlayStation focused. That should change fast once we get real gameplay footage. But there's one console here that I think is genuinely fascinating to talk about, and it's the Xbox Series S. The Series S is dramatically less powerful than the other three. Its GPU is roughly a third of the Series X's, around 4 teraflops compared to the 12. And its memory situation might actually be the bigger issue. Only 10 gigabytes of shared RAM, running at lower bandwidth versus 16 gigs on both PS5 and Series X. In an open world this dense, that memory ceiling limits how many high-resolution textures, NPCs, and objects the console can't keep track of at once. So, what does Rockstar have to sacrifice to make GTA 6 work on this machine? Analyzing the trailer footage directly, Digital Foundry predicted something close to a 720p internal resolution target on the Series S, a significant step down from the roughly 1440p class target expected on the PS5 and Series X. And the reasoning is genuinely interesting. He pointed out that Rockstar's ray tracing reflections are so central to how the game looks that you can't simply switch them off. You need an entirely different fallback system built for weaker hardware. Expect reduced ray tracing, lower texture streaming quality, and almost certainly no 60 frames per second option on this console. Now, I want to be fair here, because this conversation gets heated fast. Take-Two's own CEO has publicly said the company supports every platform its players are on, regardless of the technology gap. And just this month, a developer from a completely different studio publicly pushed back on people using GTA 6 as a benchmark, pointing out Rockstar has spent well over $1 billion and years of development time. That's not a fair comparison for most games trying to hit similar targets. The Series S was never going to be the definitive way to play this game. The real question was never whether it runs, it's how much of an experience survives the trip down to a $300 box, and honestly, we won't know that for certain until we see it in motion. Now let's zoom out of the console by console specs for a second, because there's a bigger point buried in all of this. 30 frames per second doesn't automatically mean a bad experience. There's a real difference between a rock-solid 30 and an unstable one that dips into the low 20s during busy scenes. Rockstar has historically been very good at frame pacing and motion blur, the kind of technical polish that makes a locked 30 feel a lot smoother than the number on paper suggests. So the real question shouldn't simply be, is it 30 or 60? It should be whether the experience feels stable, responsive, and visually consistent once you're actually playing it. That's a more useful lens than observing a single number before the game is even out. And if you're a PC gamer watching it, you're probably wondering something else entirely. What about PC? Now here's what we actually know. There is no confirmed PC version of GTA 6. Not a date, not a window, nothing official from Rockstar at all. But based on history, GTA 5 launched on console in 2013 and it didn't reach PC until roughly 18 months later. A lot of outlets are predicting around 2027 or 2028, but that's a prediction built on an old pattern, not a promise. So if you're thinking of buying or building a PC specifically to play GTA 6, I'd be very careful about making that decision around the release date Rockstar hasn't announced yet. And this actually brings us back to the question I asked in my PS5 Pro video. Do you actually need to upgrade? Because after going through all of this, I don't think the answer is as simple as buy the most powerful console you can. The question is what kind of GTA 6 experience you actually want, and whether the console you already own gets you there, or whether you're chasing something the hardware genuinely can't deliver regardless of the price. Now let's make this personal. If you own a base PS5 like me, don't panic. Every sign points to this being the platform the game was actually built and shown on. You're getting the real intended GTA 6 experience. If you own a PS5 Pro, you're already positioned for the best looking version available. Just go in expecting a sharper 30 frames per second, not a faster one. If you own a Series X, there is no obvious reason to be worried based on what we know right now. Even though the public analysis is thinner than I'd like, its specs are comparable to the base PS5, and Rockstar has a strong track record of keeping those two platforms in step with each other. If you own a Series S on the other hand, this is where I genuinely pay attention to reviews and technical breakdowns after launch before forming an opinion. It's the one console where real compromises are basically guaranteed. The question is just how big they end up being. So should you actually go out and buy a new console just for this one game? If you're already sitting on a base PS5 or an Xbox Series X and you're happy with how your games genuinely look and run, I don't think GTA 6 alone justifies spending hundreds of dollars based on assumptions that haven't been confirmed yet. If you don't own a current gen console at all, that's a different conversation. The base PS5 remains the platform with the most direct evidence behind it, and it's also the cheapest way in. But if you're specifically debating a PS5 Pro purely because you think it'll get GTA 6 running at 60 frames per second, stop and go back and listen to everything I just walked you through. The evidence points the other way. You'd be spending real money chasing a frame rate that current analysis says almost certainly isn't coming. GTA 6 is clearly pushing these consoles harder than we've seen in a long time, but that doesn't mean your current console is suddenly obsolete. And honestly, I think that's the biggest thing to take away from this. Don't upgrade because you're scared your console won't run GTA 6. Upgrade because you actually want the benefits of the newer hardware for its own sake. Because until Rockstar gives us the final technical details, anyone confidently telling you exactly how this game is going to run is making a prediction, not stating a fact, including everything you just heard from me. And honestly, the safest prediction right now is simply this. GTA 6 is going to push every one of these consoles right to its limit, and Rockstar is going to make different trade-offs on each one to get there. Now, I want to know what you think. What console are you planning to play GTA 6 on? PS5, PS5 Pro, Xbox Series X, or the Series S? And are you actually considering upgrading specifically because of this game? Let me know in the comments. As usual, any feedback from you guys would be greatly appreciated.